to the Energy Realities podcast on a fine Monday morning or afternoon with David Blackman in Texas. How are you today, David?
Just lovely. It's a beautiful day. It's cool. We had a little norther come through on Friday evening, and it's like we're in October all of a sudden, and it's just the 3rd of August. So I'm really enjoying it.
Why you never complain about the weather? Why is that?
As long as I'm in Texas, I don't complain. Every day's a
Yes,
beautiful
great
day to be in
spirit.
Texas, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I had a nice vacation. Thank you. And we've got Tammy Nemeth in the UK. Tammy,
Good
how are you?
morning, good afternoon, everybody. Doing well here in the heat. It's great.
Are you having another heat wave?
Oh, yeah. It
Yeah.
hasn't really stopped, I think. We had a bit of rain on Thursday, but not much. And yeah, kind
And
of
yet you're
like,
wearing long sleeves.
yeah, because my room is nice. I like it.
Good. And we've got Stu Turley with some lovely banners in wherever you are.
You bet. My hidden bunker in Oklahoma today, but I'm going at meetings in Dallas tomorrow.
Is that
So,
good or bad?
Is that good or
oh,
bad?
it's good.
Okay, lots of news this week or so. For starters, we had Big Oil's second quarter reporting season. And again, they're raking it in, as the Wall Street Journal, and not just the Wall Street Journal, said, as if it's really bad to make money on your products when they're in high demand and supply is restricted. David, your thoughts?
Yeah, we never see those headlines in the Wall Street Journal when media companies are making a lot of money. It's only when oil companies are making a lot of money. Nobody complains when the solar companies are raking in big profits
Yeah.
from government subsidies. They just complain about when oil companies, particularly the big integrated companies like Exxon and Chevron and Shell and BP, those are the most prominent ones discussed in the United States, of course, make big profits. This time they're making profits because refining margins have blown out in this price environment and amid President Trump's daily change in tactics related to Iran. Sometimes we're going to invade and bomb, and sometimes we're going to negotiate, and it just seems all designed to influence the markets. And he did it again on Saturday, and got the drop in oil prices that he wanted. Um, but yes, gosh, I mean, was it BP or Shell? Shell reported all-time record quarter profits, $12.5
Yeah.
billion profit for the second quarter. BP had a record profit for the second quarter. Chevron had extremely high profits. Exxon had big profits too. Between Exxon and Chevron, their profits were $27.6 billion in the second quarter alone. That wasn't a record for either one of those companies, but it was really close to it. And, it's not surprising. Price of oil is strong, refining margins are strong. Um, I have noticed, though, here's one thing I've noticed, and it's very interesting to me. When prices jumped up about 12% early last week, gasoline prices did not jump up 12% early last week. And as prices fell towards the latter part of the week, gasoline prices fell with them, at least where I am. And I think we've seen, because of President Trump's browbeating the industry about price gouging, which, you can argue that either way. It seems to me we may be seeing a change in behavior from the wholesale pricing on oil coming out of these refineries. Now, I don't, that's just anecdotal, but, throughout the first 3 months of this crisis, anytime the price would jump up for crude oil, the price for gasoline would immediately rise and rise very quickly. Uh, that that seemed not to happen quite as strongly this last time. So maybe the president's browbeating on that is having an effect. But in any event, big oil's making big profits. Should surprise no one. This is when big oil makes big profits when prices are strong. And it's no surprise, and it's the market working as the market should work. And we only complain about it where oil's concerned because we see the gasoline side so prominently, signs so prominently displayed with prices on the side of the road. You can't miss them, and we have to buy it. It's a mandatory consumer good, and everyone resents it when the price goes up. And, that's just human nature. So it is what it is.
Yeah, apparently demand was not destroyed as fast or as much as some may have hoped. But I've been reading about fuels in the past couple of weeks, especially, and a lot of analysts, well, maybe not a lot, but some, the smarter ones, have been warning since April, by the way, that there's a difference between crude oil futures prices and actual retail fuel prices, because as Energy Aspects and Rita Sen said back then, it's the fuels we consume. We don't consume the crude oil. So you can watch the futures curve all you want and make bets and win or lose money on that. And this is what President Trump's Truth Social polls are moving, the futures prices, but they're not really moving the physical prices of oil and the fuels that are produced from this oil. Tammy, how long do you think this disconnect between physical markets and futures markets can continue?
That's a really great question. I have no idea. I don't think anybody has an idea.
Yeah.
It's so detached from reality, or at least the reality we think we know. And I know it's a complicated situation. I think a lot will depend on if the Houthis are doing their sort of last gasp to try and help Iran, and that ends quickly. Everything is unclear, and I don't think we have all the information that we require to make an appropriate prediction. So I think it's interesting, the whole gas prices thing, because when oil prices are relatively stable and they don't fluctuate too much, then you can go after gas stations for why are you shifting your prices like this or whatever. But when there's so much volatility in what the price is, whether it's a swing in $10 a barrel, $5 a barrel, whatever, and there's the uncertainty there, the refiners, if they're selling the product to the retail service stations, there's all sorts of things that are factored into that price. And people, they get mad when there's a fluctuation at the pump, but there's a lot of different elements that come into it. And we always criticize when the retail stations say, well, it takes a while for those numbers or the price that we paid originally 3 months ago to roll down into what we charge at the pump and so on. But it's very frustrating when you see the oil price go up and then automatically they increase at the pumps. Well, what happened to that 3-month fluctuation or whatever? So I don't know. It's complicated. I don't think we have enough information, and yeah, that's my take on that.
Thank you. We never have all the information we need, but back to big oil, both Exxon and Chevron are warning that there isn't enough fuel being produced because there isn't enough crude available. One of them, I forgot which one's actually logged record oil production for the quarter. Was it Exxon or Chevron? I don't remember. But even with that, and with their refineries operating at much higher utilization rates than normal, there is still not enough, because refineries in the Middle East have been compromised and can't produce normally. And what a lot of us forget, including me, until I read it in some reports in the news, is that the Middle East was exporting a lot of refined fuels as well.
Yeah.
Because Middle Eastern countries have been building new refineries and have been producing more. And now some of that's gone temporarily, but who cares if it's temporary if it's not here when you need it? So
that's a good point. So what I think is interesting, if I could just go back a little bit to what we were saying, you and David were saying about the profits, because everyone on the left, and we have the rise of the left, in the United States, they hate big oil, right? They just hate big oil. And part of the thing when you, like with all the forest fires and whatnot happening in Europe, the World Attribution people immediately produced a report saying this is because there's a 20 times possibility that all of these forest fires happen just because we use oil and gas. And they came up with this absurd number saying we can absolutely pin it on oil and gas. So then you have the oil and gas companies say we have these profits. So that will give justification for further lawsuits like the one from Colorado and California and elsewhere, where they are saying that the oil and gas companies need to pay for the damages done by forest fires. And I could totally see a case being brought to bear in the European Union saying Total, Shell, any of the European companies, Exxon, everybody will need to pay for the damage done by the forest fires. I can totally see that coming.
Even if
in the
it's
United
arson,
States,
because
too.
I've seen some images showing forest fires starting at several points simultaneously, which is not climate change.
Right. But it doesn't matter, right? They just need to get that narrative out there. And when there's these high profits, they'll say, look, they have the money. They have the money to pay.
That's the problem. They have the money. They should share.
They have the money to pay. And this is the argument they make in Canada. They're trying to get a class action lawsuit going for the fires that happened in 2023. You've got the same argument being made in Colorado and elsewhere that the companies have the money. Look, they have all these profits. They should pay. And so it's like they hate big oil so bad that they will go after it, but they will never go after PetroChina. They will never go after any of the state oil companies.
No,
they'll just go to, the Western.
Yeah, but they can't make PetroChina pay for the wildfires in Spain or France.
Sure, they can. Sure. Right? Because it's emissions, and emissions aren't confined by borders. They're global. So they can go after whichever companies they believe they'll give an attribution to whatever percentage of production they put on the market that gets consumed. And you can readily figure that out. And they'll apportion a fine, I could see, to these different companies. That's their goal.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're right. But PetroChina or Rosneft or Aramco, we don't care. We're not paying. While the European super majors, for example, they count among their shareholders these institutional investors that are very climate conscious, and they may pressure them into paying. But what gets me is that, Stu, what do you think? Do you think this kind of thing that Tammy is talking about, hating big oil and wanting to fleece them, even skin them, because they have the money, is not really good long-term thinking? Like what we have discussed previously about the UK government, you can tax them out of business and you're left without taxes from that business afterwards. What do you think?
I think this is absolutely entertainment at its finest. Let me get rolling here. First, the fires in France and Europe are arson. Seattle is arson. Canada, I remember seeing all the Canadian fires. You take a look at the satellite images, 30 fires started simultaneously from a lightning bolt. My right. I'm going to bet on that one. Then I see pictures of helicopters flying around, starting fires. Right. Okay. Let's get started with oil prices. President Trump, love President Trump, hate President Trump. But when he's calling out the oil companies for the refineries for this, that's a real mistake. And when we sit back and take a look, the price of, you mentioned physical versus delivery. Right now, there's a physical delivery price of a tanker, if you want oil to go in and get cracked at a refinery, is about $129 today. Now, I'm old enough to remember 3 weeks ago, Goldman Sachs said if the Red Sea was shut down or the Bab el Mandeb Strait, $120 oil would happen. We're at 79 and change this morning. What's going on? Oh, 5.1 last Friday, 5.1 million barrels were sold short on the barrel. Somebody shorting the market at an unbelievable rate. I'm calling a hoo-ha. Who's got money? Somebody that can print money is probably doing that over there to do that. What happens? The stock market goes up. I'm calling it like, stay out of it, because the retail investors are getting slaughtered. Here's where I see things going around the corner. And that is, this is going to be a longer war. I think Iran's got better missiles going on than we thought. They've taken out more bases in different areas. But you also have Ukraine resetting the entire war. There's now talks of Zelensky wanting to get access to Starlink so he can target more Russian bases from Elon. And I call that a huge mistake. That is absolutely weird. But we're poking the bear, and the bear's getting kind of grumpy. I believe every single refinery in Russia has been hit. They're back up to 40% production. They're going to stop producing out there. What we have, Irina, is a global shortage of refined products. This is the number one issue nobody's talking about. So we have two ways that you can reduce the crack spread. That is, build more refineries. I'm going to sit here and wait. I'm going to hold my breath for the next refinery.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen.
All
Okay.
your
Brownsville.
refineries.
Yeah, it ain't going to happen. The new refineries aren't coming in line thanks to what
we have
Emmy had
one
just
being
mentioned
built in
about the.
Brownsville today, right now. Brownsville refinery. You and I interviewed the CEO. So we have one.
We have one. It took 7 years to get here,
Yeah,
David.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
and let me get my my 7-year
Go ahead,
snorkel out
sorry.
of the closet. The other way is demand destruction. And so those are the only two ways to eliminate what's called the crack spread. So the crack spread right now is absolutely huge profits. And President Trump, when Exxon and Shell put out their earning statements of huge bucks, they said, wait a minute, we made a lot of money, but what is the average recycle or the maintenance period for refineries? About $100 million. So it's expensive to take. We're running in the United States at 96% right now refinery rates. We need to maintain those things. Doesn't even take a drone strike to actually take these things down. They run hard, they run fast, and they burn out. I got two speeds, on or off. Refineries have two speeds, on or off. Period. I'm a refinery. I run hard. But when I shut off, I go work in my shop and I shut the world off, kind of like Irina. You know, you and I have a lot in common. And so when you sit back and look at this whole mess of an energy thing going on, the Bank of England today, I believe it was today, said, we are no longer funding coal because of net zero. This goes back to net zero. There's more coal. I hate to say the Bank of London. I'm going to do a Joe Biden here for half a second. There's more coal being used today than 20 years ago. You know, if you want to make money, put clean coal in. Net zero is a real problem. Climate activists admitted by the UN is a real problem because it's a mistake. Arson should be the one. Thanks for letting me rant.
I don't even know what to say after that.
I hope I cut. It's all related.
Irina's frozen.
Yeah.
Everything is related as we're sitting here going through all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
And so that's my whole point is we sit back and take a look. Energy policies matter. In the U.S., we've got to get our elections fixed. Otherwise, we're just singing Dixie. you now have the Strait of Gibraltar in play. Can you hear me?
Tammy, can you hear? Tammy can't hear us now. Uh-oh, we're being attacked. The White House is.
I'm
attacking us.
here.
There you are.
No,
Okay.
just
Tammy,
okay.
can you hear?
internet was down for a second.
Oh
sorry.
no.
We're not
Tammy?
being attacked.
Tammy, can you hear
Oh
us?
no. Can you hear David and Stu? I can't hear anybody.
You
Okay,
can't
I'm going to
hear?
restart.
Oh no. Boy,
We may be attacked. If it's
cyber
not just
attack,
me.
Stu, cyber attack. Oh goodness. Where do we go from here?
Okay.
But Stu, thanks for mentioning refinery maintenance, because that's what my Substack today was about. Nobody's talking about maintenance season, and it's starting.
Yeah, I wrote several articles on it last week. And when President Trump called them out and said, wait a minute, I go, time out. If you're not going to have good returns and you're not going to entice investors to come back in, and you sit back and put this in, this is actually a real problem, because you've got to have investors in order to make the money and return it to the investors and to keep price down. It's not socialism where we all have a group therapy hug and then say, oh, oil's going to refine itself. No, it's called capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that question all the time, Stu, from readers. Well, why can't we refine all our own oil here in the United States? Because you hear President Trump talking about us producing all the oil we need here. Well, but we still import 6-7 million barrels a month because we can't refine it all here. And we have to export a bunch of it to be refined.
And that Brownsville refinery will be the first refinery in the United States that will be able to crack sweet crude from the Permian. Oh, wait a minute. Here we are. We're now 100 years into this game, and we are just now getting a refinery to do our own oil.
Well, so other refineries have expanded and put in trains that can refine light sweet crude. The Baytown refinery, Exxon's Baytown refinery, can refine about 200,000 barrels a day, I believe, of light sweet now.
Right.
So, and Motiva, what used to be the Motiva refinery, and now I can't remember who owns the damn thing now, can also refine light sweet. So there are other refineries that can refine that grade of crude, but it's not nearly enough. We're producing 5 million barrels a day of light sweet crude in Texas alone every day.
Yep.
Okay. And we're going to have that Brownsville refinery, as wonderful and glorious as it is only going to have 160,000 barrel a day capacity when it comes online next year. Now, there are plans to expand it afterwards. But, that's kind of a drop in the bucket, really, when you look at the amount of production. So that's why we have so much going out of Houston and Corpus Christi ports to be exported and to be refined in other countries that have refineries that can take care of that grade of crude. And it just had to happen. We were about to reach a bottleneck. I mean, in 2015, and that's why there was such a heavy lobbying effort to get Barack Obama to repeal the 1977 ban on U.S. crude exports. And we got him to sign a bill that was an omnibus budget bill that included that language. He had promised to veto a standalone bill, but he did end up rescinding that law, and so he gets credit for it. And that had to happen. If it hadn't happened, we'd be producing maybe 1 million barrels a day in Texas instead of 5 million. So, I mean, that people forget about that moment in time that was absolutely critical to the subsequent growth in U.S. production, for better or worse, regardless of what anyone's opinion about it. That's just the history of it. So, yes, we need more refineries. Stu, do you remember what the investment in that Brownsville refinery is? $11 billion, I think.
Something like
funded
that.
By India, Reliance in India.
Yeah.
Because they need that grade of, those products from our crude. So 11 billion, and you probably need, what would we need? We'd need a dozen more refineries at least.
Well,
Maybe bigger than
the
that, wouldn't it?
UK is very much like California. We have
California. Mhm.
California, and when you sit back and you go, UK has got how many? 2, 3 refineries now?
I don't
Something
know.
Two, I think.
very,
I think
very
it's 2.
minor. And you have 7 out of that used to have 38 in California. Russia now has 40% of their capacity back online, and 100% of their refineries have been hit by the short guy. So it's just been pretty amazing that the technology is changed. There's a shortage of refineries around the world. India is the swing trader of refining capacity in the world right now.
Oh, and the other thing we need to mention too is that the United States Congress is about to pass a bill that's going to crank down even more sanctions on Russian exports. And Russia, of course, as Stu pointed out, their refining industry has been dramatically reduced thanks to the Ukraine war. India needs refined products from Russia, and we're about to sanction export of those refined products. So that's going to make the situation on the global market even tighter than it already is if Congress passes that bill, which President Trump has promised to sign. And, our Congress is worthless pretty much all the time, but this is the one thing they'll probably end up getting done, is one that's going to increase gasoline prices for everyone in the United States. That would be typical of the United States Congress.
Yeah.
I think that President Trump may sit on this one, David, because Russian oil is critical right now for the global market.
It absolutely is.
Oh, well. The UK has 4 refineries, by the way. It's amazing.
4, okay.
It's
okay,
4.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
That's 2 more than I thought they had.
Yeah, I mean, that's great.
Well, yeah, they've been shutting them down. But
Ed
like in
Miliband's been falling
2014,
down
they
on the
had
job.
17 or 7. Well, yeah, he's not there anymore. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But speaking of refineries and getting oil to them, a long time ago in the 1950s, Canada built an oil pipeline from Edmonton to Sarnia, Ontario. And one of the big refining areas in Canada is Sarnia. And when they did it, they routed it down through the United States, and it goes through the Mackinac Straits of one of the Great Lakes through Michigan. And the Supreme Court of Michigan just ruled on Friday, 6-1, that they have to reconsider the permit that was granted to Canada to upgrade that pipeline and to make a tunnel and put it further underneath the water. And this comes at a time when Canada's already upset with the United States for various other things. And there's been talk that they want to build a new oil pipeline from Edmonton to Sarnia that would be an all Canadian route and not go through the United States to avoid all this kind of political litigation and climate lawfare and whatnot, because that is what it is. It's climate lawfare. And so the thing is, if they shut it down before that pipeline is built, and we know how the regulatory process takes forever in Canada, even when it's considered national interest, there's no guarantee that they would even get a shovel in the ground in under 3 years. So it's like if Michigan decides they got to shut that pipeline because of the risk to the Great Lakes or something, then you see a whole large percentage of Canada's refining, where they get it from Canadian oil, would be in jeopardy. So that would add yet another issue for not having enough refined products in North America. Just throwing that out there.
Wow.
Irina, do you see net zero being something that is going to drive continued deindustrialization in the EU?
Is this a rhetorical question, Stu?
I find it amazing that the EU leadership is going down this path.
Well, it's too late to go back. We've said this so many times. They're so deranged, they have no way of going back because they're in too deep.
Yeah.
And the situation with diesel is really, really dramatic in the European Union. And it's not just because Russia imposed a ban on exports and just extended it until next year, until they, handle their own shortages at home. It's because there isn't enough diesel for the whole world, and especially Europe. And EV sales are at record highs. So what? Nobody cares about that because heavy machinery, agricultural machinery, doesn't run on electricity. Even if you have a couple of electric tractors here and there, I mean, the bulk
Sure.
of European agriculture and agriculture everywhere is done with diesel trucks. So it's not looking good. I mean, gas in storage is below normal levels for this time of the year. Oh, and by the way, my husband just replaced the gas bottle we use for cooking, the LPG bottle. And the price is about twice as high as it was just 6 months ago.
Wow.
Obviously, I blame American LNG because Europe switched to American LNG, but it's not producers' fault. It's the fault of those who said, yay, we have energy security, yay, but it comes at a price. So, yeah, now we don't have enough diesel either. And it should be a very interesting winter because, as you said, Stu, this war is not ending anytime soon. And when analysts were talking about the implications of a continued conflict in the Middle East, most of them appear to agree that by August it will get really, really bad. It's just that nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Because we all watch futures prices because that's
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
So that brings up an interesting point. And I know everyone here will remember in late June, both Exxon Mobil and Chevron executives were speaking at a conference in New York City. And Mike Wirth, the CEO of Chevron and an executive vice president at Exxon, and they both said, we're going to reach tank bottoms by the end of July, and the price is going to go crazy because we won't have enough crude at Cushing for Cushing to continue to function as this major distribution hub, sending crude oil to all the refineries from Canada and elsewhere. And so it is August 3rd. We haven't reached tank bottoms. In fact, I couldn't help noting this morning in the Wall Street Journal, there's a major story about the fact that we haven't reached tank bottoms and we're really not close to getting to tank bottoms. And so that price blowout we were going to have isn't going to happen.
David, we did hit 18.6 last week in Cushing. Cushing is now bypassed because it is at tank bottom, operational bottoms, but it's lost the importance. They're just pumping it straight to the refineries and bypassed it.
Well, but that's Cushing's. Well, you can't just, the pipelines go where they go.
Right.
Okay. You can't just say, well, I'm going to bypass Cushing, and what are they doing? Putting it on a truck?
No, the
pipelines go where they go.
You missed my point. They're not storing it and then going through. They're just shoveling it straight
that's
to.
A big part of Cushing's
right
function. So I mean, the point I was going to make is that we keep hearing all these disaster scenarios. They get put out into the media. The media amplifies them. And then the industry, what does it do? It finds workarounds for these disasters like Stu just described. And the crisis doesn't happen. And we've seen that repeatedly throughout this war. But at some point, it does seem to me that the situation it's continuing to deteriorate, just in terms of reduced inventories everywhere, because we've taken 1.2 billion barrels of oil or something crazy like that off the market, out of the system. So at some point, it seems to me, if this continues, the situation continues at Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb, you're going to have to get to that crisis point. And instead of just having this, what would have been a relatively limited crisis with Cushing hitting tank bottoms and disaster happening in the United States, it's going to be a global disaster when it actually comes about, because we keep putting Band-Aids on these bullet wounds in the global system. And when that happens, I don't know. You know, maybe you get to an end to the war before it does. But boy, if this really is going to be a long-term, multi-year thing, it's hard to see. I mean, I don't know, Stu, do you think we can keep printing the money and shorting the paper markets forever?
That has absolutely no effect at the price of the pump. That's what I
Right.
think.
I
I
know.
absolutely
It's
get tickled
physical.
by whoever's doing this does
Right.
not understand the crack refining spread.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just, it feels like just a really bad situation that just keeps getting worse underneath the headlines, and the headlines keep
The
saying
Exactly.
the same thing. Yeah.
I want to pose this to Tammy and to Irina. In the United States, we're seeing JPM, we're seeing a lot of the major utilities, New York, MISMO or whatever, new MISMO, whatever they are, have been putting out that rolling blackouts are really starting to happen. They had a data center go offline, excuse me, last week. I'm not getting choked up. I'm just kind of laughing. A data center went offline for just a little bit, pulled out of the grid, and it had a ripple effect on the U.S. grid that almost turned into Spain's Iberia Peninsula type blackout. And it kind of was a warning signal. Then you have New York City keeping their two peaker plants that should have been retired years ago, and they've now got a clean energy pipeline to Canada through their electrical thing that they spent, I think it was $3 billion to put in, so they can have a clean energy to have a Canadian outfit say no more electricity for you. Are you all seeing grid rolling blackouts potentially because you have the water in the Danube? You've got several nuclear reactors that are not being able to produce because they can't cool. It's not a design feature to have no water. It's kind of a real problem when you can't cool the water, and you can't do that. So how's Europe's rolling blackout looking?
Well, there aren't blackouts yet, but yeah, Hungary is tapping the European grid. And funny enough, it's advising people to conserve energy. Why? If there's so much solar and wind elsewhere in Europe, and they can step up and fill the gap? Or can they? Apparently they can, because nuclear power plants produce a lot of energy. And I'm really genuinely happy that our nuclear power plant hasn't yet begun to experience this sort of trouble. Apparently there's enough water for it to cool, even though the Romanians have had to shut down one of their reactors. It's just across the river, basically. But I'm not complaining. I hope nothing happens. We're being assured that over the next 3 weeks, there's no danger of water going so low to, jeopardize the normal operation. But this thing with Hungary's nuclear power plant and with Romania's power plant just shows that there is no certainty with any power generation source, because climate zealots really like to point the finger at oil and gas and say they can get so expensive, and look, now there's a war and there's not enough gas, etc. And solar is so secure. No, it's not, which we've said enough. And now nuclear is not 100% secure either. If you have a extended drought, the water level just falls. You can't do anything about it. So in a sense, nuclear is also weather dependent, but to a much, 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 much lower extent than the truly weather dependent wind and solar. And for all their problems, gas and coal, they are there. The problem is just the price when supply is limited.
Yeah.
So I think it's really nutritious food for thought what's been happening around the world and in Europe lately. But I doubt a lot of people will dwell on it. They just call for building more solar panels. Speaking of, did you know they're now building solar panels in northern Finland?
Oh my gosh.
Northern Finland.
Yeah, they have really long days during the the sunny part of the
Yeah.
Arctic summer.
Right. Yeah.
And they're generating so much and not a word about the very long, cold and dark winter.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do they do in the very long and cold, dark winter?
They have
build
tied the panels to wind turbines for a hybrid installation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I hope it works out for them.
They're doing something similar in Canada in the Arctic because they use a lot of diesel in the wintertime in order to, keep the power on and whatnot. And the idea is that they would have solar augmenting in the summer to reduce the amount of diesel consumption, and then have the diesel in the winter, which makes kind of sense because there's not a lot of people, and maybe you could generate enough power. I don't know, but it's good as a backup. The problem is that if you want that for your entire nation of tens of millions of people, when it's so unreliable, and you end up building out a double grid, as we've talked about before, where you have to have the exact amount of backup that you have with wind and solar or whatever, anything that's weather dependent. And this is what's interesting is when people really push, we should have more hydro, whatever. But what happens when you have drought?
Exactly.
And when you have drought, the hydro doesn't work. And, yes, okay, maybe the sun will help with this, generate some power from the solar panels, but sometimes if it's too hot, then they don't work either. And if it's too windy, then the wind doesn't work. And if it's calm, then you don't have this. And, if you have the coal, which is reliable, but it's been so demonized outside of China that it's, it makes no sense for the UK, for example, to want to push more and more wind and solar in a geographic area that is constrained. And there isn't that much, good farmland or whatever, and they want to put solar panels everywhere, or like when they put it on a hospital, but they didn't install it correctly and it burnt the hospital down. So if yeah, that was a few weeks ago.
I'd forgotten about
Yeah, so I mean, then there's somebody like burn wood. Yes, well, they do that in the UK. It's called Drax, where they take the wood pellets and they they converted a coal plant or something to burn pellets and whatever. But
and then they bought pellets from the United States. That really saved the planet.
Right. So I mean, originally the idea was that you would take the leftover bits of sawdust or whatever from normal forestry practices or wood that you can't really turn into lumber or something, and you would compress them into these pellets or whatever that would then be used. And yay, that's great. We're doing full 100% usage of the wood. Win-win-win for everybody. But then it turns out there wasn't enough. So then they're like amazing that, right? And so then they had to do this.
Nobody could have seen it coming.
No one could have seen that coming. But I guess what's interesting, like Patrick Devine makes a point here about the water, non-cooling water, no condensate, feed water, too hot, poor steam pressure to turbines. So it's interesting that even nuclear relies on water, and what happens when you have a situation where there's a drought, right? And I think what's fascinating, David Turver had a really good piece on the weekend about all the crazy in the UK about the drought, and it's never been like this before. Well, it turns out actually there was a study back in 2020 where they looked at all the droughts in the UK from the Middle Ages to like the 1900s or something. And you could see there would be these cycles where there would be droughts way before there was industrialization. There was a period when Oxford had no water. in the 1600s. The fire in London, the big London fire that everybody talks about, was the second year of a huge drought
Mhm.
where people were running
Right.
out of water and stuff. So it's not like there's never been droughts before. But now they want to pin it on the oil and gas companies, like we talked about earlier. But what I just want to kind of pivot a little bit after that. The big news is that BP looks like it's leaving the North Sea,
Yeah.
that it's going to try and sell its assets or whatever. And I don't know if it's because of all the, I'm sure a contributing factor is all the ridiculous, absurd net zero regulations, the uncertainty where everything has to go before cabinet to decide whether or not the approvals are real, then it goes to the court and all this kind of stuff. But I think maybe the other aspect is that their bottom line is suffering. And,
Yeah.
maybe it's just how the business has been run and they need cash, need to sell assets. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I
I
think you're
think
right.
BP is done, and they're going to be trying to do a fire sale to survive. Shell is also getting rid of their renewable wind division to focus on natural gas trading. So they're going after the profitable type stuff. So when you take a look
LNG.
at trying to survive, you're going to see the tale of two different companies at that point. Fire sale and survival. Who's going to buy something when you have Ed Miliband potentially being the next prime minister after his stint as a foreign secretary? I wouldn't touch anything in the North Sea from the UK. I wouldn't even give you $1 because now I'm picking up the liability for those things.
That is a
Yeah.
problem, isn't it? Yeah. BP has never really recovered from the Deepwater Horizon
Yeah.
Oh, no.
catastrophe in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010. 11, excuse me. Thank you. So 15 years later, that catastrophe drained them not just of over $100 billion in fines and penalties and other things. It also drained them of a lot of credibility inside the industry with potential business partners. That took a long time for that company to recover that credibility. Uh, a lot of it was due to the CEO they had at the time, who shall remain nameless. And then they made a series of bad hires as CEO.
Yeah.
They've been
Hmm.
through Meg. What's Meg's last name? The current CEO.
O'Neill?
O'Neill. Meg O'Neill is highly credible. Had a wonderful track record before coming to BP. I don't, not including her in this list, but she is, I believe, the fourth CEO in 7 years at that company. You can't continue to have this constant churning of senior leadership and, remain one of the leading companies in the industry. They're completely non-competitive with Exxon and Chevron, just in terms of every financial metric and safety and other metrics that are kept. And you can trace it all back to Deepwater Horizon. And even before then, before that, people forget that BP was responsible for a major pipeline disaster in the North Slope of Alaska. And before that, an enormous fire and explosion at a refinery they'd inherited from Amoco, their Amoco acquisition in the Houston area prior to that. And so it had an abysmal safety record even before Deepwater Horizon. It's a company that's just never recovered from all of that and doesn't appear to really have the financial means to do so. So I'm like Stu. I think that ultimately it's either going to get sold off for parts or it's going to be acquired by Shell or another one of the bigger majors.
Well, I'll throw this in there. I know that BP has also been active in this carbon capture storage projects in the UK, whether it's Teesside, Humber, then the Northern Endurance partnership with Equinor and I think Total. And, maybe they need cash for that. Maybe they're getting out of the oil and gas production business, and then investing more in these carbon capture storage projects. I don't know, but it seems like when they tried to pivot from being British Petroleum to Beyond Petroleum, you know, they still do some solar, they still have some wind, and I think that pivot really um, created a lot of sunk costs, I guess is the polite way of saying it. And when you're reliant on government subsidies in order to make this profitable, that's
Yeah.
that's a problem. And yet the LinkedIn user says ROI matters. Absolutely. Return on investment. And are they making a return on that? But if the government is pushing them into these carbon capture storage projects in order to remain viable as a company, and when we talk about the refineries are an issue, and what's the electricity supply, what's the grid like on all this stuff, what are the EU and the UK doing to make it easier to have a more stable, reliable grid? They add regulation, they add carbon emissions accounting, they add all of this stuff that makes no sense, but they're doubling, tripling down. And as Irina said, they're in so deep. Their egos are so tied to all this stuff. I really don't know what the out is for them to save face. And, the war is an opportunity to save face and be like, okay, look, these are extenuating circumstances, force majeure. We really need to reconsider our climate policies, our energy policies. But no.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful opportunity to do just that, but they're not. Like, who is going to buy BP's North Sea business?
Well,
I think they're hoping it's smaller companies.
that's what it's going to be. They're the only ones who will bid on it, and
With the taxing regime in the UK, that will be really
know.
great.
Yeah, very courageous.
Yeah.
No, nobody's got the cash.
That too. Yeah.
I mean, if the assets were in the Norwegian part of the North Sea,
Yeah.
then you might have a real opportunity to get a good return on those assets. But being in the UK part of it, I think they're all in the UK province.
Looking at the last earnings, the BP's taxable net, I was looking at the assets. I wouldn't touch them. Not worth it.
Well,
I'm just saying that when you have windfall profits tax, I believe it was hitting 78% of their profits. You can't reinvest. The whole oil and gas industry is about reinvesting into the next well and doing it fiscally responsible. And that's what the United States guys have done, and done very well. They learned. ESG actually did something good for the oil and gas industry, and that taught them governance in the United States.
yeah, but in
I
a
don't know.
completely different regulatory environment too. I mean, it just, even as bad as it got under Biden and Obama, our regulatory environment in the United States kind of pales in comparison to what's been implemented in the UK. And
Oh, yeah.
so, it's just, it's a different world they're trying to operate in. And I guess that brings up the next question of whether anyone thinks that a move completely out of the UK of their headquarters to the United States or somewhere else for both BP and Shell could be part of their future. If things continue to go in the same direction in London, that is always a potential possibility, but there's a million considerations about it that might make it impossible for those companies to do. I just don't know. I mean, it just seems like if you're going to survive, if you're BP, or remain competitive with Shell and Chevron, Exxon and Chevron, Shell ought to be at least having it in the back of their mind as a possibility.
Patrick has an interesting comment. The migrants flooding from the UK from countries where they're used to rolling blackouts may not mind if their energy is unreliably so much. It's kind of a frightening point.
They
But
will
that
mind.
applies-
That's why they've gone to the UK
And Europe.
to not have rolling blackouts.
But there's fewer rolling blackouts here. There's
But we're
like, yeah.
the media assures us they're coming to the UK because of climate change. They wouldn't lie to us about that, would they?
Yeah, that's what they keep
Why
saying.
the migration is because of climate
The,
change.
the
Yeah.
UN admitted that they overreached their thing. So
What? Overreach what?
I don't know what their thing is.
the
and I'm trying to
UN
find out.
admitted that they did an overreach of exaggerating climate change.
Oh,
Oh, the
yeah, I mean,
IPCC, yeah, they removed their most dramatic emission scenario as implausible and unrealistic.
Yep.
Just about a month ago or something.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was a while ago. But what's interesting about that is, they said that it was never meant to be used. It was like an extreme example, absolute worst case scenario,
Yeah,
just to get people to think about stuff. And then it got used by the central banks as the business as usual. And the guys who wrote it were like, "What are you doing? This isn't what it was intended for." And I would submit that the same thing's happening with emissions accounting, because the greenhouse gas protocol was not designed to be used in the manner in which it's being used, to have this minute accounting of every carbon dioxide molecule. It was meant as a thought exercise for companies to think about all of the different aspects within their supply chains. It was never meant to be used at a granular level. And the guys who wrote it said, this isn't what it was intended for. And yet that's what it's being used for. And now they've partnered with ISO to create a methodology that companies can roll out and use to be doing their emissions accounting. And the EU is like, yeah, this is great. ISO is supporting it. Now there's this adaptive methodology that companies can now deploy.
they're just trying to create new businesses. All those carbon accounting companies ready to help you with your emissions reporting. So you can't really create any new business in something that makes sense, such as, I don't know, car manufacturing. You can't even support the existing businesses. You're killing them. So let's invent some new businesses in carbon reporting, carbon accounting. Is really...
Yeah, and run by AI. And the AI will go through your books and organize everything. And
yeah, because Europe is going to be an AI continent,
Yes. With what energy?
Oh no, is that Ursula von der Leyen's new line of thought, or where does that come from?
I think so.
Oh no,
Irina's
Irina
frozen
froze
again.
Oh no.
Come back, Irina.
Come back, Irina. We need you. So I want to congratulate Asland, Pilot Car 4450, for today's glorious quote of Antonio Gutierrez, Talking Points, Global Boiling. He's he's kind of calmed down his rhetoric more recently. Hi, Irina, you're back.
Hi.
I was just vamping until you got back.
Oh well. Any last points you'd like to make?
I think the world is going to heal eventually. I think the world is going to be getting a better place as the corruption becomes more open.
Yeah.
I think that people are going to wake up and start realizing that they've been fed a crock of stuff. And I, for one, am sick of being fed a crock of stuff. So I think the world is going to be a better place once the corruption is done. But I think what I'm seeing more, in fact, that's right. This LinkedIn went by the Abilene data center last week. Huge construction. That's about a rock throw from my house down there in Abilene. And it's huge. The other thing that is changing is people need to realize you have to take energy. When I say energy security starts at home, I'm very serious. Energy security starts at home, but your energy dominance is displayed through your exports. United States is exporting a lot of its materials, but it's also exporting its expertise in drilling. I did not have Iraq new contracts in Iraq for the new oil companies there, the new pipelines. Pipelines are being built at record speeds to bypass choke points.
Yeah.
Choke points are going to be passed. This is going to be a change in how energy is remapped around the world. And I feel that people need to really look at wind and solar at their houses, not at the grid. Be able to have supply and take care of yourself. I have solar, wind, and batteries. But how do I back all those up? I've got propane or gasoline generators to feed that animal. So if you have your own grid and you can support yourself, wind and solar work great when the sun shines, when the wind blows. But it's nice to have a well-designed system. Texas ERCOT 2 weeks ago, or was it last week? Boy, I'm in a time warp. We had an all-time high of 92 megawatt usage, but we came within hours of having a Iberia blackout. The sun went down. We had 10 megawatt hours come onto the grid immediately because of the storage. But guess what happened? Wind picked up 3 hours later when the storage was running out. If the wind hadn't picked up, ERCOT would have had a problem.
You can't rely on luck.
You can't rely on that's not
because
grid
we're still
resiliency.
short of dispatchable reserve capacity,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
have been for a decade, and our power supply companies refuse to build it.
It's because the subsidies are drying up and the bum rush for subsidies in the United States is over. Now comes the bum rush for land reclamation, because it's going to be in 10 years from now, we have got a real problem in the United States with all these wind turbines and everything else that are coming offline and solar farms. There is a energy crisis of biblical magnitude coming in 10 years.
Yeah, same thing in Germany, because they started on their Energiewende, was it 13 years ago? So, yeah.
Long enough.
Long enough. Same in the UK.
Oops.
Any closing remarks, David, Tammy?
No.
No, I just second what Stu just said.
Yeah, he's quite. And I wanted to say thank you to you all, because, dear viewers, this is my last regular appearance on the Energy Reality Show, because I'm a selfish person. I want to look after myself, and that involves less talking about energy. You've all been great. I love you all. We'll stay in touch. I just won't be ranting as much. I'll be ranting in written form. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for watching us, listening to us, and I hope you'll still keep doing it. And have a great week, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you,
Already,
Irina.
Miss
Thank you,
Irina.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.